Welcome to an hour of HealthMade Radio. HealthMade is a community for natural health seekers where we educate people about common health conditions and share extensive research on the most effective natural health treatments and promote legislation that protects our health freedoms. A core concept belief is in the innate intelligence and healing power of the body, and if properly supported spiritually, emotionally, and nutritionally, it can find its way back to health. HealthMade Radio will bring information from integrative health experts throughout the world. Health is what you make it. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, and I will be your host. Today's guest is Stephanie James. Stephanie James is a psychotherapist and licensed clinical social worker with over 30 years in the mental health field. She has a thriving private practice that she began in 2007. A graduate of Colorado State University and University of Denver, Stephanie James is also an advanced level EMDR 2 trauma specialist. Stephanie has been leading workshops in the Rocky Mountain region since 2007. She's a host of the motivational radio show and podcast, The Spark, with Stephanie James, which launched in February 2018 and is listened to in 48 different countries. Overcoming challenges herself from a divorced and dysfunctional family, along with 30 years of clinical experience sitting beside others to help them overcome their most difficult life challenges and traumatic events, psychotherapist and radio show personality, Stephanie James shares both her personal and collective wisdom in her new book, The Spark, Ignite Your Best Life. Part of the collective wisdom of The Spark comes from its ability to not only educate the reader on how to deal with uncomfortable feelings, but how to ignite the sparks within each one of us to live a richer, more fulfilling life. As we heal ourselves, we become the concentric rings that ripple out to all others. Stephanie and co-producer Doug Beechwood just completed a film read in 2021, When Sparks Ignite, written by Stephanie and directed by Doug. The film features luminaries and thought leaders on a unique journey through life's hardship and heartaches to a place of healing where transformation of their own lives and that of greater humanity is possible. We never know what sparks we might ignite in one another. And I looked over at the cast of that movie. I mean, that's pretty incredible. The people that you've lined up in that movie. I mean, that's everybody and anybody that I read books from.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
me too. Me too. I had read all their books and had them as guests on the show. So, yeah, it's been truly just a divinely inspired and serendipitous coming together for that film.
Yeah, I just remember the Jacob Lieberman. Yeah, he's one of the individuals, one of the cast members. And his book, Light Medicine of the Future, I think that was back in the 90s that I read that book. Yeah, it was revolutionary at that time.
Yes. And one of his latest books, Luminous Life, is one of the books I interviewed him on my show about. And then I had this beautiful thing happen. 2 years ago in August, I was gifted a trip to Maui, and that's where Jacob lives. And so my daughter came with me, my youngest daughter, Haley, and we were able to just spend time with Jacob. I had breakfast with him a couple mornings, and we just became very close, dear friends. And he was really one of the original sparks for the idea of the film as he and I continued to grow in friendship. And, he said, I would love you to come to Maui and do something where we had these luminaries and thought leaders together, and we would call it Lights of the Round Table.
Oh, I love it. That's incredible.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, that's like the King Arthur court, but here you have the lights of the round tables instead. We need that now in the world.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And just to share with you, really the whole coming together of the film then, it was so divinely inspired. It was after a meditation that I got the download that I know some of the most serving hearts and brilliant minds in the world because of these amazing people I've met on my show and have become friends with. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if we did bring them together and not only did Lights of the Round Table, but had them come together for their own unique event where, we were meditating together, praying together, singing together, making music, eating meals. We did do this wonderful meeting that I facilitated of Lights of the Round Table. But the whole purpose was this group coming together where usually people, when they come to present, and the third day of this, we did do a summit here in Fort Collins, Colorado, where I live. The whole purpose of this wonderful coming together was there was a created alchemy that occurred between all the presenters. And instead of just presenting on the stage for 45 minutes and coming off, and then you never talk to anyone, we had just had so much rich connecting and sharing that we brought that to the stage. All the presenters stayed. They were part of the audience. We supported one another, and then had our own celebration afterwards. And this was all, the beautiful thing is this was all filmed. So it was all with an award-winning film crew with Doug Beechwood. The whole event was filmed, and we did individual interviews where these people that are really luminaries were sharing some of their deepest pains and some of the challenges they went through. So, Michael, it's not like we were all born, people were just born illuminated, or they were born somehow, actualized, that we've all gone through these really difficult times and challenges. And so that's really the premise of this film is, going through these difficult times that we're all facing right now, and knowing that so many times, oftentimes these challenges and difficulties become the match point inside of us that ignites something really beautiful that then becomes the gift we can share with humanity.
I love that, yeah, and people don't recognize that. They see these well-recognized individuals that write these fantastic, inspiring books, that really touches you and in a way and change you, how you think and feel about the reality around you. But you don't recognize that there's a price that was paid from that individual in order to be able to get to that point. They just didn't come out perfect, and they didn't get to that point without their challenges. They paid that price in order to be able to gain that wisdom, to be able to access that spot inside of them. That I believe almost is that what you call the spark? That kind of inside igniting factor, or what is the spark?
Yeah, I really do believe that the spark to me is our essence, number one, that we already have this beautiful divine spark within us. But oftentimes, through life circumstances and, limiting beliefs, different things like that, it's almost as if we cover that up. Like the Sufis would say, it's covered with many veils, and the work is to lift the veils. And so as we do our own healing, we can get in touch with this inner spark within us. And as we do that, it does become this passion. It becomes this purpose, and really does become like something that's ignited within us. And we can't help but want to share it and help other people to heal.
So it's almost like the journey or to connect with that spark, that essence that we already have. It's not something that we need to become or do. It already exists within us. And the key then is to unravel the things that are covering that up, and that becomes our journey. Am I correct with that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's so important. I think we all get these programs for happiness, and that it's outside of us, that if we have the right, car or home or relationship, or we just look a certain way, then we're going to be happy. And really, it's an inside job, and it's something that's always accessible to us. So really learning how to be in touch with that divine spark within us, I think that's the key. not seeking it externally, and knowing that none of us are separated from it. It's available to all of us.
And in your book, I mean, obviously what's in your book, that's 30 years of experience that you distilled in one book, The Spark, Ignite Your Life. What are some of the interferences that you see? I mean, because we all have things that prevents us then to connect with that deep essence, that core essence of who we are. I mean, what are some of the interferences that's blocking an individual from being able to connect with that you've seen?
Yeah, great question. I feel like distraction is really huge in our culture. And I feel like oftentimes we're distracted from ourselves. So that just stopping, we get distracted with social media and the TV and, working and kids and families. There's always going to be distractions, but being able to stop. And a lot of times I'll tell my clients, just start with 10 minutes in the morning, just 10 minutes of silence. And maybe all you do is sit down and focus. I learned a wonderful technique from my own life coach, which was just sitting down on the floor with your back against the sofa and just literally feeling into the floor, feeling where your body meets the floor for 10 minutes. And that really just will ground you within your own body. And it's only when we can silence some of this noise, we can get in touch with that inner spark. So I would definitely say, Michael, that is one of the things that keeps us from being there, is just distraction. And I would say another thing is, of course, we all have what I referred to earlier. We all have these limiting beliefs. And, no matter how evolved it is, I swear every guest I've had on my show as well will talk about that, will speak to that. And when I had Bruce Lipton on, he was talking about the fact that the first 7 years of our life, we're really in this theta brainwave state. And so we're not able to really separate what someone says about us from the truth. We just say, okay, that person's being critical of me in this way. Well, that must be the truth. We just absorb everything like a sponge. And these beliefs become subconscious, and we don't even realize that they're controlling our lives. So I think there's lots of processes we can do to kind of wake up to ourselves and wake up to our lives and realize and kind of, pull out these weeds of limiting beliefs so that we can really cultivate an inner garden of calm and peace and happiness where there's room then for those sparks to ignite.
I love it. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm here with Stephanie James. She is the author of the new book, The Spark, Ignite Your Best Life. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Stephanie James. She's the author of an amazing book that I finished last night. It was incredible, called Spark, Ignite Your Best Life. So I really loved what you were saying about how we weed out all the distractions, and also what you're talking about in regards to Bruce Lipton, how we are like sponges the first 7 years, and just kind of all input, it just becomes part of us, and we have a hard time to kind of discern whether good or bad. We just take it in, I assume, for our own survival at that point, because we think that the information out there is what will help us to survive through life. What I'm curious about, though, a lot of times that input obviously is not the best kind of input. And how do we as an individual later on in life then be able to kind of clean up that input? Because I'd assume that input really becomes a part almost of the core of our being, and that is becomes something that interferes with our ability to connect with that spark, that divine essence within us. So how do we kind of discern and clear that out? Because a lot of it we don't even remember.
Right. And I do think that that's what you just said is one of the keys, is becoming aware of what's not in our awareness. When we actually stop, and there's really specific exercises we can do to get in touch with what these limiting beliefs are first. I think it's one of those things, like once we have the awareness of what is guiding us, then we can change it. And what I encourage people to do is break it down into the different areas in their life. So if you think of, your fitness and your physical self, think of family and relationships, and think of wealth or your financial status, your career, your spiritual life, and look at those different areas individually. And really writing things down is so essential. So making this a journaling exercise where you're writing down in these areas, what are the beliefs that keep me from living the life that I want? It might take a little bit of, being quiet, going within, but pretty soon, if I just use, let's say, wealth as an example, when I have clients do this process, what they become aware of is maybe, well, gosh, growing up in my family, my dad always said, well, rich people are unhappy. And so there was a part of me that subconsciously I held on to, well, I don't want to be rich because I don't want to be unhappy. And they don't even realize that that's one of their limiting beliefs from having abundant wealth. And of course, we see this so often in relationships, when people have painful relationships. And, I can share one of my own limiting beliefs that I discovered actually through a weekend workshop that I was in. And they were asking us to come up with, we were going to do a journaling exercise where you program your mind to think about what you want it to think. So you had to come up with an affirmation that was really powerful. And then every night for 30 days, you would journal the evidence that showed up to support this one affirmation. Well, in order to support it, they asked you to float back and think, well, what is it that really, isn't working in your life, or what's one of those limiting beliefs? And, I was thinking about it, and in my mind, I was like, well, I'm the oldest child of my family. I've always been very driven. As a single mom, put myself through grad school. I always am very decisive. And I started thinking, how interesting, where that really comes from as I floated back in my mind. Where that really comes from is when my parents went through a really horrific divorce when I was 13, and my family just blew apart. I literally got the message that I can't rely on anybody, and I've got to do it all myself. And so I carried that through my whole life. It manifested in some ways that kind of looked positive, but in other ways were keeping me from having maybe deeper relationships. So my affirmation became, I'm completely loved and supported by the universe. And the presenters were saying to really blow it up big so you see evidence of it in your life. And right away, I started seeing evidence. And the evidence at first was small things, like every day I get great texts from my girl and guy friends, and just very loving and supportive. And I noticed how nice people were at the stores to me when I'd get groceries or my coffee. And once in the first week, I had 2 different baristas give me free cups of coffee because they said, oh, we just love when we see you in here. I mean, it was just this really amazing process. And at 2 weeks, without going too deep into the story, there was a situation where my house had flooded, this brand new house I had just moved into and spent a great chunk of my savings remodeling. And the basement had flooded while my daughter and I were gone for the day. And when I came back, the neighbors all came over. Even though they were new neighbors, people brought shop vacs and fans. And one of my girlfriends who lived 4 houses down saw the commotion and came over. And she said, what's going on? I told her. And she left, and 15 minutes later came back with a $1,000 check and said, here, you need a water heater. My husband has a truck. Go get, you guys need hot water tomorrow. And so it really blew the lid off that old limiting belief of, I can't rely on anybody else. I have to do it all myself. And so, this has been about 10 years ago, and it has changed my life so much because now I allow people to support me in ways that I didn't before. I have friends that are like, thank God you come and talk to us, because it felt like, maybe something was wrong with us. And so it was really a depth and a level of maybe authenticity I wasn't sharing, because I felt I had to do it all myself. So, so these are just a couple of the ways that we can really start identifying what are the limiting beliefs. And then, as you said, one of the ways then that we rewire this, if it's a deep trauma or a limiting belief, I would encourage people to do EMDR, which is a beautiful trauma protocol used by the FBI, military, for agents that have experienced trauma, and it will change your neural pathways. But if it's not traumatic, and it's like for most of us that just get these childhood negative messaging, when we identify those negative beliefs, we can then go back and write what it is we want to believe instead. And then not to just leave it at that, Michael, to take it to the next step, where we write the affirmation and then an action step underneath it. It's not enough to just say, I am healthy and fit. You write an action plan underneath it. So my 2 steps would be, I eat nutritious food daily, and I work out 45 minutes 5 days a week. And because of that, I think it really helps us. We start seeing, they say it takes 30 days for change in our brain for something to become a habit. As we start affirming these things daily and we start taking these action steps daily, within 30 days, we can see significant change in our lives.
That's incredible. Yeah. And the power affirmation, that you're talking about is really huge. And then you being able to identify then where your belief was coming from. And I think that is actually, because most of us have gone through some kind of hurt, something that has given evidence that we can't rely on other people and that other people are hurtful. And so we have that protective guard against that. And then to really kind of balance that out with the that the universe is loving and giving and caring. And obviously, pain is part of the journey, and you can't avoid pain fully, and you can't kind of have that as evidence that you don't want to connect with anybody. You need to somehow get beyond that. And I'm curious, because in your life, you had that hurt when you were 13, through the horrific divorce. And then you realize that you can't live as an island, no man is an island, or, we should not live by the Simon and Garfunkel song,
You're right.
So what did you, how do you deal with hurt? When somebody is reinforcing that, they are, people are hurting you, or they're doing something where you feel you can't trust them. How do you deal with that? Because that becomes evidence in the opposite of that the universe is there protecting you.
Right. Well, and I would say if someone's continually hurting you, as an adult, you really need to be reevaluating that relationship, and if that's a safe relationship to be in. Sometimes, though, we're getting those messages through work. I've had clients who say, my boss is so cruel to me or is so mean and is giving me really negative messages about myself, even when I'm working really hard. And so that's when, again, I feel like it becomes an inside job, that we're not allowing others to dictate or define who we truly are. And we have to be more in touch with that than other people. And that's really what I talk about in the book, and I really practice and believe in, is this art of befriending ourselves. And I think that we can go through, Byron Katie, in her book, Loving What Is, talks about a process of checking out what the truth is. So if someone says something to you like, you're a terrible worker, or, something negative about you, you can ask yourself, and again, journaling this is so helpful. As we write things down, it's like we're getting it to stick in our minds. We're telling our minds it's important. So, asking yourself first, is this true? And you might say at first, well, yeah, maybe it is true. And then Byron Katie's second question is it absolutely true? And most times it's not absolutely true. Her third question is, who am I when I believe this thought or I believe what this person has said about me? And then the last question, who am I when I no longer believe this? And you can start moving it to what would I like to believe about myself? And then, in my own interpretation, not only what don't I want to believe about this, but what do I believe about me? What do I really know about me? Like that I really care about my work, that it's really important to me, that I do try my best, even if I do mess up. So I may have messed up on that report, but I really am a good person. And I think by doing that, we're able to untwist some of those negative beliefs and some of that negative thinking around how someone else is perceiving us, and we're better able to hold on to our own truth and our own light.
Well, that's really amazing. We'll be going to take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Stephanie James. She is the author of The Spark, Ignite Your Best Life. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Stephanie James, and we are discussing how you can connect with that inner essence, that core essence of your being, the spark, and how you can remove the interferences in order to be able to become that of who you truly are. I know you're referring to Byron Katie, and she is, she created this amazing program called The Work, and if you have somebody that's had a journey to get to where she's at, that would be Byron Katie. I mean, being homeless on the streets of, I believe, Barstow, California, if I remember right, and then being able to pull herself out of that and then deliver what she delivered to the world. It really is a testimony of what an individual can do when they connect with who they truly are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm really, so you were talking about how to, that affirmation, and also with that, then you are then starting to create where you're starting to look for the universe and how the universe is then, or God, or whatever it is that you'd like to use. Each people are comfortable with different words or names. And you are finding that affirmation around you, not only what you're saying, but you're looking for it. And I loved how you were saying in regard to your daughter, she was pregnant, and all of a sudden she was looking around and she was saying, everybody's pregnant. And how,
right.
And how that becomes, you're talking about if you buy a new car or whatever it is that you buy, all of a sudden you start to look for that and you start to see that everywhere. So I think that is such a powerful exercise to really start to what it is that you want to affirm, that you start looking for that, and then obviously what you're saying to reaffirm that even more by creating an action plan, and that way you become what it is that you're affirming. I mean, I think that is such a powerful tool.
And the thing that I love about it, too, is that the more that we practice, one of the things that comes into play is cognitive dissonance. Because if we're affirming something every day, like if we take the health and fitness example, and if I'm saying I eat healthy and nutritious foods, and I really encourage people to say their affirmations out loud, and as we're hearing ourselves say this every day, when we go to reach for something that's unhealthy, when we go to reach for the candy bar or the bag of chips, there actually is something within us that feels discordant. It's this part that makes us pause, because it's like, wait a minute, this behavior isn't matching what I'm telling myself all the time. And we know for behavior change, one of the biggest components is just to have the pause, not to be on automatic pilot. So that's one of the beautiful benefits of doing this work, is that it actually is building in this system that is not only will it change your beliefs, but it changes behavior. And that's why the affirmations with action plan together, I think, are so powerful.
And one of the things that you're talking about in the book, which comes along with that, one of the things that you're talking about is falling in love with yourself. And then obviously if you are making choices that are not benefiting you, that are not part of your core essence, then you're literally telling yourself that, I don't love you. So what can a person do to kind of connect with themselves and fall in love with yourself? Because I feel that's the next step beyond just doing affirmations. I mean, that's a deep dive.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And truly, I believe that it begins with befriending ourselves. I think just when you meet a new person, you don't automatically trust them. You don't, feel like, okay, I can just tell you every secret that I have and I'm going to rely on you to be my ride every morning and emotionally take care of me. We just don't do that. And so the same is true as we're cultivating a relationship with ourselves. We have to learn how to show up for ourselves. And I talk about making yourself a priority in your own life. And the importance of that really being, people go, oh my gosh, that sounds selfish. I have kids or I have a husband or a wife. It really is a gift that not only you give yourself, but you give to them. And it doesn't mean that other times people aren't priorities. What it means is that you, let's say you come up with your own morning routine. And so for the first half hour or hour of the day, you can wake up early if you need to accommodate that. But what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I know what's important to me so that I can thrive. And so when I wake up in the morning, I want to exercise for 30 minutes. I'm going to do a 20-minute meditation sit. I'm going to do my gratitude journal. And then I've primed my heart, body, mind, and soul, and I'm ready to engage the day. And then I do it from a place of really feeling resourced. I'm better able to give. I'm more present. And as I show up for myself and I do that routine every morning, I begin to realize I can really trust myself to be there for me. And that is one of the ways that we start growing self-love, is feeling like I can rely on myself to take care of and see me, see my needs, see when I need to maybe take a nap during the day, or maybe I just need some downtime after work to read. So it's tuning in to yourself just like you would your partner. We say in healthy relationships, we become very attuned and intentional in how we treat our partner. Well, the same is true with us. And as we do that, we can really start to cultivate this self-love that is, it's really powerful. It is being in love, too, with that divine essence. We learn to love ourselves regardless of the mistake we make, or regardless of if we don't look perfect, or we think we're 10 pounds overweight, or we're 10 pounds underweight. We just start falling in love with that spirit that is us, that we are that love. It's not separate.
And in relationships, I know a lot of us have gone through this. You have that initial connection where where everything, you have that strong love feeling, and everything is just explosive, fireworks, and everything is great. And then over time, when that feeling dissipates, because you can't maintain that forever, you kind of get that relationship tired, where you then have to work on that relationship to keep it going. It sounds almost like you have to do the same with yourself, where initially maybe you have that kind of explorative of you're exploring the world, and that's supporting yourself, and you have that strong connection and fireworks, love, and all of that. But then over time, you are starting to forget that relationship with yourself, and you're not nurturing it. So what I'm hearing is that you have to develop these practices in order to be able to continue to nourish that relationship with yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And it's no different than in our primary relationships where you're exactly right. They're not meant to be sustained at a super high level of, all the sparks exploding and, we're in this high level of, I call it the chemical cocktail. We can't exist on that. But what we can exist on is a deepening love, and it still can be extremely exciting. I think if we approach the day with both our partners and ourselves with a sense of curiosity, we're growing and evolving and changing every day if we allow ourselves to take inventory of that, to notice that, and then to do things each day that have a little bit of novelty to them, to get out of our own routines. That's what makes our brain have to think a little bit more, because our brain is so good at automating things. It wants things to be the path of least resistance. So, we automate our partners. We think, oh, I know what they're going to say. I know what they're going to do. And we can kind of do the same thing with us, feel like, oh, I know myself so well. And yet, when we do certain journal writings or we take an online course or we just read a certain book that really speaks to our soul, we can really grow in these new and amazing ways. And so it's really showing up with kind of this child's mind every day of like, what is it that I can learn? What can I learn about myself, about life, about spirit, my partner, about love?
Yeah, that's incredible. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Stephanie James. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Stephanie James. She is the author of an incredible book called The Spark, Ignite Your Best Life. So what I really love is that, you're talking about how we tend to get on that kind of autopilot, and with that we are not really living life, we're just kind of moving through life, and we tend to do that with our relationships as well. And it's almost, from what I'm hearing you, is that it's almost like to really make it a game, to make it new, to explore your partner, but also then to explore yourself. So it's almost like you should be a detective to kind of learn all the little intricacy and to make it exciting, so it becomes like you become a doctorate of your partner, and that is what it seems like that would really help the relationship from what I'm hearing.
Yes, and I love Stan Tatkin, who's a relationship expert. He says, become your partner's whisperer, like you would be a dog whisperer or a horse whisperer. Like your partner, Michael, would be a Michael whisperer. And they would learn the intricacies and the things that are new because you're growing and you're new every day. But they also learn, this is something that I know that helps Michael to feel calm or comforted or really nurtured. And we can absolutely become those same whisperers, if you will, for ourselves. Like, this is something that really calms me down, or this is something that really brings me joy. I know for myself, I talk, I feel like every day with my clients about the element of play and how important that is. And, I still have a trampoline in my backyard, and my grandsons come over and we jump on the trampoline. And, for my 53rd birthday this summer, I did a front flip. And, I feel like it's those little things that I know ignite me during my day. Turning off the computer after work and putting on music in the kitchen. And oftentimes, with my boyfriend and I, we'll have a spontaneous dance party. And it's just, I think, some of the stuff that makes life really juicy.
Yeah, and to kind of do that exploration, from that level of curiosity, so it becomes like as you're becoming the expert, it also becomes a fun game to see what you can figure out. Exactly.
Like, this thing excites me. This makes me feel joy. This thing calms me down. This is when I do these deep breaths, I realize, wow, I can really get myself grounded in my body. So yeah, you become that expert on yourself as well. And isn't it on the doorway into the Parthenon, they have carved above that, know thyself?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's one of our journeys. And as we know ourselves and can love ourselves, we do become those clearer conduits for love, the divine, however you experience that, to come through. And we start getting rid of those blocks that keep us from experiencing the kind of life we really do want to live.
I love it. And one of the things I've always, it's been interesting to me is that, you have these kind of trainings and courses where, people are focusing on, wealth, they're focusing on success, or becoming all of these different things. And so I know a lot of people that want to be more connected with who they are. They feel that there's kind of like a dissonance. It's almost like you were talking or about one of your clients that saying, rich people are not happy. So people are then thinking that, if this is what I should focus on in my life, the wealth, the success, or is there a different way when you create your affirmations, when you are driving towards that spark within yourself? Is there a way that you can set that up, or that path up, so that you don't have that dissonance? Because we do have these kind of selfish connotations of wealth and success, and but from what I'm hearing, it's not selfish, but how do we marry the two, that we can be on our spiritual journey but be successful at the same time?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question, because, so often I hear people say, it's, you don't become a changer in your own life or in the world by, just sitting on a rock and meditating all day. We do have to take action. And I just had an interview with Pedram Shojai, who's the urban monk. And I loved our conversation because his thing really was about being in action, that we can be, he was a monk, a Taoist monk for several years, and then said, I got to bring this to the world. And I think the same is true for all of us. I think that we can integrate both, the spiritual life and doing the meditations and doing the different things that we know serve us in growing our spiritual self. But also, we have businesses, we have careers, we're full, we're the whole, I have this whole person concept. It's all those different pieces of the pie. And so it's being able to integrate all of those and know that you can still be a very serious business person that makes great money and also be a very spiritual person at the same time. Am I answering your question, Michael?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely great. And somehow being, and that's what I'm seeing, is that you have these people that become successful, and that gives them the opportunity then to also express themselves in their kind of contribution to the world. Well,
and I have to share with you, to really share a quick story that really brings to point all of what we've been talking about is, we've all been told this thing of, just love yourself, be your own best friend. But after 30 years in the mental health field and 14 years as a psychotherapist in private practice, and from my own pain, I know it's not that easy, that none of us get out of childhood unscathed. And I felt very blessed in my life. The first 13 years of life, I had a very happy family, was super close with my parents and my brother, and I was totally a daddy's girl. Anywhere that he wanted to go, I was right there with him, whether it was going fishing or to his office or raking the leaves. I didn't care. I just wanted to be with him. And we had this wonderful family until everything exploded in one night. And, one night in May of my 13th year, my 10-year-old brother and I were woken up to the sound of screeching tires going down the driveway. And as we looked out the window, my father was jumping onto the hood of the car that my mother was trying to get out, and he's beating on the window. And this is a very happy family. So we're watching this scene unfold. My dad's beating on the window and yelling at her to get out. And what was going on, what we didn't know at the moment, was that it ends up my father was having an affair with my best friend's mother. And nothing was ever the same. We watched from that window as our beautiful, innocent childhood was completely shattered and irreversibly broken. And to just bring to point some of this, what the result was, what some of my internal messaging was, because I think it's essential that, this stuff for me also came through the hard knocks of life. Very shortly after that, my mother became emotionally unstable because she had been so in love with my father for 18 years, and it didn't feel safe to stay with her. So naturally, being a daddy's girl, I moved in with him. And very shortly after that, had a stepmother who really, made it very clear and told me that she considered me the other woman, and that the way that my father and I loved each other wasn't okay. And so literally from that moment on, I wasn't allowed to have a conversation alone with my father. I wasn't allowed to do things alone with my father. And to this day, I still haven't been allowed to speak with him on the phone alone. And so what was the result of that? Even through my life, when I moved in with my mom at 16, my father didn't speak to me for a year. And so what I started internalizing is, wow, there must be something really wrong with me. I must be unlovable. And I carried this with me, and it manifested in my life as trying to find what we were talking about earlier, all the happiness outside of myself. I thought if I just looked good enough or, had the right car, eventually had the right home or had the right relationship, then I could be happy. Then I could feel loved. And the truth was, it wasn't until, and this has been about 18 years ago, when I went to a healing school for a week in San Francisco. And as I walked in, the presenter had shaken my hand, and it was one of those shakes where he looked into my eyes and I thought, oh my goodness, this guy's reading my soul. And during the middle of his presentation, he pointed out into the audience and said, hey, you in the blue coat, I have a message. And I looked around hoping that someone else was wearing a blue coat and looked down and realized, oh my gosh, it's me. I'm wearing the blue coat. And he said, I have a message for you. And as he began to speak, I couldn't hear anything that he said. It's like my ears were just plugged. And I said, I'm so sorry, I didn't hear you. And he said, my dear, what I'm trying to tell you is, and right as he got to the is, all of the air conditioning units in the room came on and nobody could hear what he was saying. And so at that point, he calls all of us, there were 40 of us students, he calls us all up to the stage, and we're sitting on these steps leading to the stage. And he says, my dear, you obviously have a huge block from hearing this. And what I want to tell you is this. He said, stop trying. Stop trying. Because I'd been trying so hard to earn love that I didn't realize that it was right there inside of myself. He really had this moment where he intuitively said, you felt your whole life you had to be perfect for your father, and now you feel like you have to be perfect for your partner. And you can just be. You can just be. And what really changed my life was from that moment on really getting that love I had been searching for. It was already there inside of me. And ironically, I had this card at my desk that I had framed that said, all the love, all the beauty, all the strength you are seeking are right there inside of you. And I was like, wow, I really should have been reading that card more often.
Yeah.
So it really transformed the rest of my life. I think of how blessed I am today with, my private practice, my radio show, and podcast, being a film producer. I have amazing love and amazing friendships in my life, and it really started with being able, if I had a message to share, one of the messages is stop trying. That you don't have to go out and find something to make you happy. You don't have to do something to earn love. You are it. You are the love.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I always when I hear that message, I think of the movie Contact with Jodie Foster when she's sitting in that rocket ship and she's all strapped up and this whole thing is shaking and vibrating and I mean just banging her to pieces, and all of a sudden one of those pieces just kind of dislodges and she notices it just kind of floats peaceful in the air, and it's just and that kind of peaceful space. So she unlocks herself, she gets rid of all these constraints and confines, and recognize that she can just be in that peaceful oneness state, without effort, without trying.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
Yes. Yeah, so beautiful, Michael. That's so beautiful, because I think that is one of the things. When we stop trying and we surrender to that part of us that's trying to feed our ego. Those have been some of the most powerful moments in my life, is really getting to the place of surrender and not trying to push something through, but really trusting life and whatever your definition is of the divine and the universe to really show up for us. And I am telling you, I have had so many miracles that have continued to happen, and the whole coming together of the cast and crew for the film, it was all based on surrender, and it all came together and happened so beautifully.
I love it. Well, Stephanie, it's been such an honor to have you on the show, and it's such an incredible message that you are bringing to the world. So I'm really, really grateful for everything that you're doing. The book that I get the pleasure of reading, your book, The Spark, Ignite Your Best Life, it's an incredible book, and it's really something that will help people to be able to find that spark, find that divine essence within themselves. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for being on my show today.
Thank you, Michael, so much. What a joy. Thanks for sharing this time with me.
And truly my pleasure. That is it for today. You're listening to Health Made Radio. Remember, check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. 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 Is what you make it.